Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Mo.
And we're the Exploration Guys.
Yes, indeed.
As you probably tell, Mo and I love flying. But this is not the same for everyone. Even with today's aviation system of checks and redundancies, many people are afraid to fly. Today, we bring in a guest to discuss her fears and allow us to answer questions and look at ways these fears can be overcome.
Jess, welcome to the channel. You are officially on the channel of the Exploration Guys, and you're our first #1 guest. How does it feel?
Well, hi guys. Thank you for having me first and foremost. It feels nice, feels good. I get to talk about my fear of flying.
We're going to make you a star. You realize that, right?
Good.
As if you weren't already. So let's dive right into it. So can you share with us your first experience of flying, where you went, and sort of, if you can remember, what type of aircraft you were on when you took this flight?
Okay. Well, the first time I ever flew, I believe it was back in 2005. It was a family vacation, a big, huge family trip. So of course I was forced to go. I was already afraid of flying, by the way, at that point, but I had to go, and we were going to Dominican Republic. So it was a quick flight. It was a very short time. I think it was like about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken. I do remember having anxiety already a few days prior to, the time to go. And at the airport, I even remember throwing up because of my anxiety. It was so bad.
Did you at least make it to the bathroom?
Oh, yeah. I made it to the bathroom. So when we got on the plane, I was very, very nervous. At that time, I was, still young to take any kind of medication. So we ended up going, and I do recall it being, very uneventful. The flight was uneventful. It was short. It was very fast, clear skies, a very nice, calm flight to the Dominican Republic. So, when I got off the plane, I thanked my lucky self in one piece, and we were there in Dominican Republic for, I believe, a week. And then it was time to come home, of course. On the flight back home, I decided to get a little brave and take the window seat. So we were coming back, and at that time I didn't know what had happened or what it was, but my dad described it as, my dad said that we hit an air pocket. The plane ended up dropping significantly. I can't even tell you how many feet it was, or what, how far it fell, but it felt like, a really nasty roller coaster drop. Oh! Of course, everybody on the plane is screaming and crying. I think I'm screaming the loudest. And what really bugged me was that, after it happened, everything was fine, but the pilot never came on and said anything. It was like, everyone's like, whoa, what just happened? What was that? What's going on? Are we okay? Nothing. We heard nothing from the pilot. No announcement, no, it was just, okay, so something just happened, and you're not going to explain what that was. So I remember that really did bother me. Again, like I said, to this day, my dad was the one who explained to me what it could have quite possibly been, which was an air pocket. And I remember just after that day, after we got off in Miami, I was just like, that's it. That was, the last time that I will ever get on a plane. My actual fear of flying began, as I mentioned earlier, it began way before that. It was the year 2000, and I'll never forget. In the year 2000, this movie came out. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. It's called Final Destination. that movie, of course, had an airplane crash. Well, actually, it wasn't a crash. It was an explosion. The plane exploded midair. And I know a lot of people, they usually say, oh, well, if a plane crashes, that's it. Like you don't feel anything. It happens all so quickly. But it had me thinking, because in that scene, the you see people getting sucked out of the plane. You see people getting crushed. People being dismembered, and a lot of gory things happening in the plane. And then, of course, the final scene was the actual, the plane being engulfed in flames and all of the passengers being burned. It's like, it had me thinking, okay, well, what if it's not so instant as people say? What if it's not so, quick, and you don't have time to even react or know what's going on? What if you are during those final moments suffering this horrific death? And that has freaked me out ever since. And, so since that movie came out in 2000, that's when I was like, well, I don't want to get on a plane. I don't want to die a horrific fiery death like that. I don't want to have my limbs ripped apart.
That's interesting. So you've had that fear since about 2000. Did you have any anxiety before watching the movie, or was it just?
I never really, to be completely honest, before seeing that movie, obviously I've never gotten on a plane before that, but I never thought about it. I've never been like afraid. I would see it when I was little. I'd see a plane in the sky, and I wouldn't think anything of it. I wouldn't think that, oh my gosh, that what if that plane falls down, or what if it explodes in the air? I never had those kinds of thoughts.
All you understand about airplanes right now is that they explode and will tear you from limb to limb and set you on fire.
That's not really all that I know about airplanes. It's just the fear that I have. Ever since that last and final flight that I took in 2005, I became a little, I guess we can say the word obsessed, even though I don't like using it, but I became a little obsessed with air crash investigations on the Smithsonian channel. I don't know if you guys know.
Oh yeah, we're very familiar.
Yeah, so air disasters and things like that. I do watch a lot of YouTube channels on crashes and investigations, and I don't do it because I have this morbid curiosity or anything like that. I do it more for just the knowledge,
right?
Because to me it's very interesting how they handle these investigations, and it's sort of in a sense, it kind of calms me down when I watch them, even though I know it's weird to say this. I mean, I'm afraid of flying, and this is showing me, on TV, on YouTube, it's showing me people dying, planes crashing, planes exploding. It's showing me all that. But, at the end, when they start solving the reason why it happened, it kind of gets me like, well, all I had to do was, de-ice the wings, or, if the guy would have done the proper maintenance, this wouldn't have happened, and it kind of calms me down, like, to know that the planes that don't just fall out of the sky for no reason.
Right.
Planes want to stay in the sky.
Exactly. So and this is an interesting point, because I was actually, the reason why I asked you to come on this channel when we were going to talk about this topic is because I know that there's so many people that have a genuine fear of flying, just like you do today. Mm-hmm. But you're the only person that I know that has that fear. So I immediately said, Jess would be great to come on the channel to talk about this fear and this anxiety. Obviously your first time flying, you were very young back then. And now I know, just like you mentioned, that you watch these air crash disasters on Smithsonian and YouTube and some of the others. And one of the things that they teach you they do a reenactment of why it happened. And I also know that you've watched these and you've gained more experience on the subject, as in they've learned from these accidents and they've implemented certain technology and redundancies, so that these types of crashes and incidents are much more seldom than they used to be. And so in learning that and knowing that information, does that put you more at ease to say, maybe I would try this again, maybe I would try flying again, knowing that technology has improved so much and that we've learned so much from these accidents that have happened in the past?
Yes and no. The reason why I say that is because, yes, I do learn more about, why certain crashes or why certain mid-air explosions happen. And it sort of does put me at ease knowing that, most of the time, it could be instrument errors, or pilot error, or, poor maintenance, lack of maintenance, stuff like that. And then of course, after, every episode, they tell you how they've implemented new technology to avoid situations like this again. So yes, that sort of does put me at ease. But then we get into my anxiety. I have lived with anxiety for a very long time. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And I know that I've just recently, a couple of years ago, been diagnosed with that, but I know that it is something that I have had for a while, for a very long time. It's just that, when you're younger and, you explain to your parents, hey, something's wrong with me, they're just like, you're fine, and they don't really believe in those types of diagnoses, I guess, back in the day. So now, now that I do, now that I was diagnosed with anxiety, my fear is that I'm not in control. So that's where the no part comes in. I'm not in control of who is taking me to my destination. I'm not in control of whether I want to get out of this airplane or not when I want to. I can't just open a door and exit if I want to, and even in a car, if I'm not the person driving, I'm constantly, on edge because, I can't turn the steering wheel a certain way from, obviously from the driver. I can't push the brake pedal if going a little too fast, or I can't push the accelerator when I feel like he's going a little too slow,
You push the imaginary brake pedal?
I push my imaginary brake pedal, yes.
Don't we all, yeah.
And I hold on to that bar.
Well, we all drive in South Florida, in the Miami area, so that's completely understandable.
Yeah, on top of that, we're in Miami, so you can, imagine how I feel.
We'll let you in on a little secret, even as a pilot and a lot of other people that fly all the time. Like it is kind of a guilty pleasure to watch some of these investigation videos, so you're not the only one. It is true that, you tend to learn a lot from these sorts of things. And for any pilot, if something does happen, you're trying to figure out what happened, and you try not to armchair quarterback it too much. But I think you're on the right track, and just in the fact that you're looking at these things, you're almost doing it in a backwards way. It's all about knowledge and understanding about what it is that you're doing. So if you're watching these crash investigations, how these happened, you can work your way into, okay, how do these planes operate? How does the system that exists? Because it's not just about the airplane flying. It's about air traffic control. It's about the weather, all that information that's compiled, and these professionals all gathering that information and making sure it gets to the right people, to the pilots, to the schedulers, to the route planners for commercial aircraft. And, they all want to get there too. So does the pilot. And there's so many systems of redundancy. And even if there is a maintenance issue, more than likely it's not going to bring the plane down because there's a backup system, and typically a backup system on that. And as they do, if on the off chance something happens, and it's getting rarer and rarer, like in the US alone, they went 10 years without a fatality, a single fatality in aviation. It was quite amazing considering the millions of air traffic cycles and airplanes that fly over the entire country. And it's understanding how that works is another way of making you figure out, oh, okay, this is what it is to do. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be able to go somewhere and visit somewhere. And, you know, especially in this country, it's a large country. You want to go anywhere to the West Coast and all that. And we travel for work as well for all the time. And so for us, it's, you know, we're trying to figure out what airplane we're flying on and, you know, what upgrades we can get and all that sort of stuff. You know, you kind of come business class whores and all that sort of stuff. But that's certainly, is there anything that you don't understand that you're curious about and what it is, how that works?
No, off the top of my head, no.
Yeah.
It's just more, it's when I start to think about it, it's a lot of you know, a lot of people try to cut corners as well. So it's like, you know, I know that, like you just mentioned, you know, the pilots want to get there. You know, everybody wants to get to the destination. So of course they're not going to want to do anything to bring the plane down. But, you know, a lot of it will have to do with, you know, who is taking care of these planes. And that worries me, you know, that I don't know who's taking care of these planes. I don't know if there's a disgruntled maintenance worker that just, you know, decided to cut corners and not do his job right. And then, you know, obviously it's nobody's fault on the plane. You know, the pilot's doing everything he can, but,
yeah,
you know, because of faulty maintenance, this can happen. So it's, you know, that's the part that I think, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the number one part that we have to, or that I focus on, that, you know, who is taking care of these planes? What kind of maintenance do they need to do?
Maintenance, I can tell you, is highly regulated in terms of how many cycles, how many hours a plane is flying. Mechanics are licensed mechanics. There's oversight with the NTSB and FAA. Typically, even if they discover something on one airplane that becomes, oh, maybe there's a trend here, we've noticed a bit, especially airplanes as they get older, sometimes you find, oh, we've noticed a certain crack or something. And when they say cracks on airplanes, these are typically microscopic things they find in the structure where they're looking for failures in terms of, because the airplane flexes and it's designed to flex and move and react to its environment. But, you know, and they do these inspections to make sure everything's sound. And if they notice something, especially on the same aircraft type, they notice a few of these things, that gets reported. And that'll get reported to the manufacturer, to the FAA. FAA will then let everybody else know, hey, you know what, been noticing on these at about the 5-year cycle on a 737 or a DC-10 or something, we've noticed that maybe a crack is starting to form in the metal here, a bit of metal fatigue. Let's do these inspections now to look for that. And they may find it and some may not. Depends on how many cycles. Like an airplane has cycles. Every takeoff and landing is a cycle. Takes off, pressurizes, cruises, lands and depressurizes. And that's all, the planes are designed to do that sort of thing. And these are designed to go into 30 to 40,000 cycles in the aircraft's lifetime. And that can be extended by inspections, you know, and they get into serious maintenance checks when they get into the D-level check where they basically disassemble the entire airplane, inspect it like it'll take a 2-month process to do this stuff. And the airlines spend millions of dollars doing this to these aircraft. It'll be in a hangar for 2 months. They'll break it down, disassemble everything, look for any structural issues, redo it all, and then put it all back together again, and then off it goes. And it's signed off on. So there's a heck of a lot of maintenance that goes on these things, especially, you know, in the commercial industry. So the odd of, even if you get one rogue mechanic, there's very few things they can kind of do to cause an airplane. Anything that dramatic would be noticed. You know, before every flight, there's a walkthrough. Anything a pilot may notice, hey, I've noticed an issue with something, that gets reported, and maintenance is always on the airplane. If you fly a lot like Mo and I do, sometimes you're waiting. Hey, you know what? It may be just a light out, but there's some indication of some problem, and they got to wait for it to get the logbook to be signed. because there's accountability. There's a heck of a lot of accountability and license. These mechanics aren't just pulled off the street. There's a lot of liability that they have, and they're certified as much as the pilots are. And so there's a big focus on that. Definitely.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I want to ask you just about, you mentioned just about the topic of anxiety again. You mentioned in the beginning that it was sort of a, would this be a painful death, or would it just be instant? And then, there was the movie of the suffering, and it wasn't instant. And then, so
Right.
that sort of changed your view that this wouldn't be an instant thing. It would be a painful, in a sense, a slow death. Have you ever explored sort of what the root cause of the anxiety is? Is it the fear of the slow death part of it? Or is it the fear of, I don't have control over getting somewhere? And then the second part of the question is, you spoke about, there's this statistical data that we talk about in terms of transportation. And you've heard before that flying in an aircraft is one of the safest means of transportation. We'll put up some statistics now, but even with you being in control of your vehicle when you're driving it, you're at a much higher risk of getting into a car accident and potentially suffering and dying or having an instant death. And the statistics show that are real and factual that your chances are much greater of dying in a car accident, because we have thousands of people a year that die in car accidents,
Right.
in comparison to what we have with airline incidents. And so do those statistics sort of play a role in, and I guess in the facts, do they play a role in sort of simmering down the anxiety a bit when you think about those things?
Well, let me answer the first part of your question first about the anxiety trigger. I would have to say that it's a combination of both, because you mentioned, is it the suffering or dying a horrific death on a plane, or is it just the fear that I don't have control? It's actually, in my opinion, of course, they're one and the same. And the reason why I say that is because death is it's unknown, right? In a sense, you don't know what happens. You don't know what comes next. And I'm not going to get religious. I'm just it's just that there is a certain unknown, right? When you speak of death, like you don't, what happens. You don't know, right? That's also, that goes hand in hand with me not being in control. Well, I don't have control of what happens when I die, or how I die, or, just, so to me, in my brain, and the way that functions is that they're one and the same. So they're kind of, it's the same anxiety. It's the fear of the unknown.
If you could overcome your fear, or work on overcoming your fear, is flying something that you desire to do more of? It's sort of like to explore the world or see places that you haven't seen before, perhaps overseas?
Yeah, that's the question I get asked a lot. Yes, I'm obviously not closed-minded. I do want to, I do want to visit Europe someday, I do want to go to California. And I know that, I'm going to have to get on a plane in order to get to those places to, experience something new, or something that I've been wanting to do. So do I want to get on a plane anytime soon? No, I don't. But will I eventually get on a plane? Yes, I will, because like I said, I cannot live in fear forever, and I cannot, I can't hold back on doing things that I've wanted to do, or that my family wants to do. You know what it is to tell your kids, say, "Hey, I want to go to California," and I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not flying. Sorry."
Yeah.
So I don't want to deprive my family nor myself out of visiting other destinations, or experiencing other cultures. that I would need to get on a plane to do. But it's not something that I'm really excited about. But I
that's
will.
an interesting point you make on how, you don't want to disappoint your family, or you still want to see these things.
Right.
And that is one way to overcome it, is just thinking about, not even about the journey, but the final destination. And focusing on ahead of that, even when you're on the plane.
Not the movie.
Yeah.
No.
I was gonna say that.
I haven't even seen the movie, but that's but I do see, I've seen the National Geographic things. But the your final point of your travel is that's the means to get to it. And even in between that, understanding, and feeling that anxiety, thinking, well, this is going to get me to where I'm going to go, and thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to go to Disney World. I can see Hollywood. I can see Catalina Island or something out in California. Great up there. Would it be interesting to know if you went with somebody like one of us and were flying with us, and we could talk you through what's going on at every given time? Would that be helpful?
It would. I would say it would ease my anxiety a little bit, because I know that you guys are very knowledgeable when it comes to airplanes, and it would kind of calm me down a little bit.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think I will ever fully, be okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just me speaking right now, because mentally this is what and I haven't been on a plane since 2005. So, and I think that even no matter, let's just say, next year I get on a plane, and knock on wood, everything's fine, and I make it home, I still don't think that I will fully be okay with flying, or 100%, happy about flying, or, having to get on a plane again. I think that I will be very, very nervous every time I would have to get on a plane.
Because if you hadn't had that, what you call the air pocket, which sounds like probably a bit of clear air turbulence. It's like being turbulence it's just air is a gas, just like water is. It's just different density, and it moves. If you're in a boat in rough seas, things will move, and so will a boat, and so will an airplane. If you had never experienced that, because you talk about that in that flight, about that point where you felt the plane drop, and it could have pitched down a little bit. You're gonna get that feel like on a roller coaster. That's a negative G, you would say. So it feels like your stomach goes up in your head.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of weightlessness you kind of feel. But if you had not experienced that, how do you think that flight would have gone?
I think that flight would have been fine. Like I said, I mean, the flight over there was very, very smooth.
Yeah.
So, when I got off, I was like, well, hey, this is not too bad.
Yeah.
And like I said, I even got a little excited on the way back, and I wanted to sit by the window, because on the way over there, I had to sit with my father. My father was, my hero, my security blanket. So I sat next to him. I didn't have the window seat, and I was, very nervous, during the flight, even though the flight was fine going over there. But on the flight back, I was like, hey, you know what, Dad, I'm going to go sit with my sister and my cousins. I'm cool. I'm going to go sit by the window. And then just when that happened, I was just like, oh my God, like in the blink of an eye, something can go wrong. And something that was very weird was that, I know you just mentioned, I always picture turbulence is, it's been raining, it's lightning, it's thundering, there's a lot of wind, and like you can see outside that, the reason for the turbulence is because there's a storm, you're flying in a storm. But, on the way back, it was also clear skies. There was no storm, there was no lightning, there was no thunder. It was just the brightest, sunniest day. And then out of nowhere, it's just this boom. And that was just like, okay, well, how can you say this is turbulence? There's like no sign of turbulence anywhere, during the flight. And then just all of a sudden you're just dropping down from the sky.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I could tell you is certainly, yeah, around thunderstorms and you see wind here, especially living in South Florida where there's very dynamic weather locally. Um, there is certainly turbulence around that, and actually, oddly enough, most airliners don't even fly through that. They try and avoid that. You don't want to fly through a thunderstorm because it's quite dramatic. But in the rest of the atmosphere, there's all sorts of currents, warm air rising and falling. That creates turbulence. Jet streams that are going across. You know, you're flying. The jet streams are strong winds that can be over 100 miles an hour. That in fact creates a lot of time differences in travel, east or west. Some planes have broken records where they've gotten across the ocean in like 3 hours because their ground speed is so fast because the wind is pushing them along, as well as what their average airspeed is. So it can create movement, which is another reason they always recommend to wear seatbelts all the time. You know, you can walk around the cabin, but as a rule, you'd want to buckle in. You know, if you have to go to the bathroom, obviously go up, because you never know. You could come across the ocean or a bit of turbulence like that. It's the same in the ocean. You know, everything. You know, I've worked in cruise ships in the past, and you have to have everything tied down because you never know. Because most of the time you're in the Caribbean, it's smooth, but it doesn't take. You know, you never know. And a lot of that, again, that goes with the knowledge of understanding. Oh, that could happen. It's not bad. It's not going to break the airplane. It's interesting. We may attach it to this. I've got footage of when they build these airplanes, they do load tests on the wings, for example. And it's quite dramatic how much they can bend these wings up before they break. Like you can't even imagine. You see turbulence, the wings bouncing around. You think, oh, they're going to fall off the airplane. Nah, they won't. It's unbelievable how strong they are. And so all these things are prepared for in the design of the aircraft. You know, these machines can, or the performance of them is quite impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think we definitely know that anxiety is a real thing, and there are a lot of people out there that are afraid of flying. And we are going to link to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America's website. And they actually have 8 steps of dealing with and overcoming the anxiety around flying. And so like I said, we'll link to that in the description. And anybody viewing that does have a fear of flying can check that out, including you, Jessica, to read through them.
Thank you. I will.
Hopefully we can fly with you soon. And we certainly appreciate you joining us today on the channel. And as always, as we say, Jeremy, make sure everybody likes and subscribes and puts your suggestions down in the comments if there's something that you want to see, and hit that notification bell so you're always made aware of when we post a video. And we will see you all on the next one.
Yes, thanks for joining us, everyone. And thank you so much, Jessica, for talking to us today.
Thank you.